So hello friends. So today I'll be talking on this new drug arbicacin. So it's an interesting drug. So I thought it's better I just go through certain salient features of this new drug. So that is the structure of the molecule of arbicacin, the way it looks. So it is a drug which belongs to aminoglycoside group, but with some distinct properties. And it may fit into a select group of patients where this could be considered as a drug as a salvage measure in certain infections. And this drug, unlike other aminoglycosides, has efficacy against MRSA. Okay. So this drug was first discovered in 1972, but it was first used in Japan in 1990. So most of the studies with regards to this drug predominantly come from these eastern countries like Japan and Korea, which have used this drug extensively for more than 2 decades until now. And South Korea started using this drug in 2000. So basically, I have 2 3 decades of experience in these countries, and literature pretty much comes from these countries. And more than 250,000 patients have been treated in these two countries, in Japan and Korea, with arbicacin. So the whole preamble or the pretext for this arbicacin is because of increasing MRSA occurrence or prevalence. And if we look at the sort of a prevailing data, 40 to 42% of infections with gram positive could be MRSA. So 2008 it was around 42% of the gram positives constituted as MRSA. 2009 it was around 40%. And predominantly, we know that MRSA infections is the commonest culprit in skin and soft tissue infections. So it accounts for 60% of skin and soft tissue infection could be caused by MRSA, and this particular drug is positioned for MRSA, and it has a good characteristics to cover all GMPs also. So it is one drug which tends to have coverage of MRSA and gram-negative bacilli also. So as I said, so this is how the Staph aureus looks. Arbicacin covers Staph aureus, and it has a good efficacy against Acinetobacter. So Acinetobacter looks something like that, and it has a good efficacy against the Klebsiella. So these are the notorious bugs in any ICU: MRSA, Acinetobacter, Klebsiella, and Pseudomonas. So this is how Pseudomonas looks. So Arbicacin has a very distinct property of covering MRSA with some of the resistant bugs like Acinetobacter, Klebsiella, and Pseudomonas. So this is where it has a unique positioning in terms of possible usage in these conditions. So when we talk about MRSA, MRSA could be acquired from the hospital, but what one needs to appreciate is MRSA is being increasingly recognized as an infection coming from the community also. So MRSA can be got from the community acquired also, and the typical MRSA infections where this drug is positioned is skin and soft tissue infection, as I said, and pneumonias. So MRSA pneumonias is also not very uncommon, and bony infections like prosthesis or osteomyelitis. So this drug is touted to be helpful in these typical infections where MRSA can be present. So pneumonia, skin soft tissue infection, bone infections, prosthesis, and osteomyelitis, because this drug has reasonably good ability to penetrate the biofilm, especially when we are dealing with prosthesis. So the mechanism of action of arbicacin is very interesting. So if you look at this as an arbicacin molecule, so it binds with 30S ribosome. So basically, it is a bactericidal drug. It inhibits protein synthesis by binding with 30S ribosome, and it binds to 4 nucleotides of 16S mRNA. So these are the binding it does. So it binds to 4 nucleotides of the 16S mRNA, and it binds to single amino acid of this protein S12. So this is the typical binding of these drugs, and what it does is it causes misreading of the mRNA. So basically, by binding with these 4 nucleotides of 16S, there is a misreading of mRNA, and there is a conversion of, so the active component of anything is polysomes. It converts polysomes into inactive microsomes. So polysomes are more lethal component of a bacteria, so it converts into microsomes, it becomes less potent. And another way is it causes insertion of inappropriate amino acids into the polypeptide chain, so that the protein synthesis becomes defective. So this is the typical mechanism of arbicacin. So it is similar to aminoglycosides where it binds to ribosome and inhibits protein synthesis. So this is the different dimensions of its mechanism of action. So what about antimicrobial potency? As I said, this is a bactericidal drug, and they have looked into this comparison of bactericidal activity of arbicacin. So this is the number of bacteria that are sort of inhibited by arbicacin. As you see, the inhibition of bacteria was much more pronounced with arbicacin when you compare with vancomycin, when you compare with the linozolid, when you compare with the teicoplanin. So this dark box is the arbicacin, where the inhibition of bacteria is much more pronounced, and bactericidal activity is concentration dependent, and activity, as I said, was much higher than vancomycin, teicoplanin, and linezolid. So when they look at antimicrobial potency, when you compare with arbicacin, the bactericidal effect of arbicacin happens at 4 mg per ml of this drug concentration, whilst when you look at vancomycin, when we are using it against MRSA, it happens at a much higher concentration of 20 milligrams per ml, which means the amount of serum concentration that the drug has to attain for good antimicrobial potency is much lesser than vancomycin, which is a benefit of arbicacin. And they looked at toxic shock syndrome, toxin inhibition. So the toxic shock syndrome, toxin inhibition happened effectively at 85% of the times. When compared with vancomycin, it's only 25% of the time, and teicoplanin it's only 10%, which means the toxin inhibition was much more pronounced and better with arbicacin. So they looked at 200 patients with Acinetobacter infection, and they found that the 97.5% of the Acinetobacter inhibition happened at a low MICs. MIC, see, if the MIC is high, then you know that the antibiotic potency is less. So if MIC is less, then you know the antibiotic potency is high. So here 97.5% of effectiveness against Acinetobacter happened at a lower MIC, less than 8 micrograms per ml, and 86.5% of the times it happened less than 4 micrograms. So this drug does not have to attain very high MIC for its antimicrobial potency. And as I mentioned, biofilm penetration is something which is good with arbicacin, and this can get synergistic when a phosphomycin is added with regards to biofilm penetration. So they looked at the post-antibiotic effect. So post-antibiotic effect is an advantage of any antibiotic that so the duration of post-antibiotic effect was much more pronounced with arbicacin when compared with vancomycin. See, when you look at, so this they looked at post-antibiotic effect after exposure to half peak concentration levels. So the post-antibiotic effect lasted for 3.9 hours with arbicacin as compared to 1.1 hour in vancomycin, which means to say this has a much prolonged action, and post-antibiotic effect duration also was much longer with arbicacin. And so, as I said, this antibiotic is positioned against MRSA. So, they have looked at this in vitro antibacterial activity against MRSA. So, when you look at it for MRSA, the MIC levels, MIC 90, as you see, it was significantly less when you compare to gentamicin, where it was 128. For tobramycin, it's more than 256 for amikacin, and it was even MIC levels was less than vancomycin, teicoplanin, and linozolid. And when you compare it with even MSSA, methicillin sensitive, even there the MIC at 90 was significantly less, and it was less than vancomycin, teicoplanin, and linozolid. And how about gram negative? So when you look at gram negative also, your MIC was very low, and it was comparable. So it was just definitely less than amikacin, and it was comparable to tobramycin. And MIC at 90 for Morexella, again that was also less than amikacin and few other drugs. So basically this was a Japanese study which looked at all the in vitro activity, and it was found the MIC levels at least was found to be significantly better against MRSA when compared to other glycopeptides and vancomycin, and even for gram negative it was comparable or better than some of the available aminoglycosides. So that is about in vitro, because in vitro means one could argue whether the same effect whether it would happen in the in vivo or in a clinical setting. So what is the clinical evidence against MRSA? Obviously, we need to see whether this drug performs well when administered to a patient. So this was a study. As you see, all the studies have come from Eastern Asian countries like Japan and Korea. So this was a study by Oshai et al. It was an old study. So they had 85 patients with MRSA, 37 with pneumonia, 22 with enterocolitis, 1 with UTI. The clinical efficacy of arbicacin was 85%, microbiological efficacy was 83%. So this was another study from Japan, Suzuki et al. In pediatric population, 29 infants, 4 with sepsis, 17 with pneumonia and necrotizing enterocolitis, and again clinical efficacy was 79%. And Aikawa et al. 14 pneumonia, clinical efficacy was 71.4%. Huang et al. So 103 patients with MRSA, predominantly skin and soft tissue osteomyelitis, clinical efficacy was 65 points, which means to say the clinical, we understand that in vitro efficacy was good, but even the clinical response rate was was reasonably good. So this was again from Japanese study, Yamamoto, 13 patients that took with sepsis and pneumonia. Clinical cure rate was 66 and microbiological efficacy was 62.5. And this is also a Japanese study, Matsumoto. Again, the clinical efficacy was 89.7%. So overall, if you look at all these 6 studies, the overall clinical efficacy ranged from 66 to 89.7%, and the highest clinical efficacy was found in the most latest study, which was the Matsumoto et al. The microbiological efficacy ranged from 46 to 83%. The 83% was found in the older study. So which means to say this drug is relevant, and even in the recent studies it is shown good clinical cure rates. So now the question should arise in every listener whether this is better than vancomycin, whether it's inferior, or whether it is non-inferior to vancomycin or teicoplanin. So these are the studies which compared vancomycin with arbicacin and teicoplanin. So again, these are all from East Asian countries, like this also would be from Japan, Shimizu Kan et al., where they compared arbicacin 479 with vancomycin 93 patients, teicoplanin 24 with sepsis and pneumonia. And if you see the clinical efficacy, arbicacin it was 74.7, vancomycin it was 64.3, and teicoplanin 30. So the clinical efficacy was much better with the arbicacin group, and microbiological cure rate also was comparable. And the most interesting is even the adverse reaction, if you see, it was much lesser when compared to the teicoplanin, at least in this study. So this was another study, Huang et al. So where arbicacin was used in 73, vancomycin in 73 patients with sepsis and wound and catheter related. And even here it was not found to be inferior. So it was non-inferior to vancomycin and teicoplanin. But what again you see here, the side effect profile, adverse reaction was significantly less than in the vancomycin group. So vancomycin tended to have more toxicity profile when compared to arbicacin. So this was another one, again arbicacin 63 patients with and vancomycin 59, predominantly in skin and soft tissue. Again it was shown to be non-inferior. But what you see consistently is adverse reaction was significantly less with arbicacin compared to vancomycin. And this was another study, again non-inferior, and as you see adverse reaction was significantly less when compared with glycopeptides. And so this was so a lot of studies happened with Huang et al. So 2013, 15, 16, all different studies. Again, arbicacin, teicoplanin in skin and soft tissue, non-inferior. Side effect profile was definitely less. So overall, the conclusions one can make is when you compare head-to-head with vancomycin and teicoplanin, clinical efficacy rate is comparable. It is non-inferior to them, but the adverse reactions were significantly less with arbicacin. So now we have spoken about MRSA, that it was effective in vitro, and even clinically they are comparable to glycopeptides, and side effect profile is less. So what about gram-negative pathogens? So arbicacin potency is similar to gentamicin, and potency was found to be greater than tobramycin and amikacin. So they looked at ESBL E. coli, and they found, this is again in vitro studies, where they found arbicacin was 2 times more potent than amikacin and 4 times more potent than gentamicin and 16 times more potent than tobramycin. And this was a study from Korea. and they looked at the MIC studies. So minimum inhibitory concentration from Sadar et al. This was a US study where they looked at arbicacin MIC levels in comparison to amikacin and gentamicin in MRSA, and they found the arbicacin MIC was 8 to 32 fold lower when compared to amikacin, and 32 to 128 fold less compared to gentamicin, which means the antibiotic potency was far superior with much lower MIC in gram-negative infections. And this was for E. coli. When they looked at E. coli, they found 2 to 4 times, 2 to 4 fold the MIC levels were lower compared to amikacin, and it was 8 to 6 fold lower when compared to gentamicin against E. coli. So against MRSA it was much higher. Against the E. coli it was much lesser, which means to say amongst aminoglycosides, the potency of arbicacin seems to be much better than gentamicin and amikacin or tobramycin in treating gram-negative infections also. So pharmacokinetics, 70% of the drug is excreted in the urine by kidneys within 8 hours. And what they have found is whether arbicacin can be used in pneumonia. So for that, the indicator is bronchial epithelial fluid concentration when compared to serum. So almost half of it was attained in the bronchial epithelial fluid, which means to say, so as much as the serum concentration would achieve, half of it would be attained in the lungs, which is a very good penetration into the lungs. So it can be used very effectively against pneumonia. And if you see all the clinical studies of Japan, so they have included MRSA, pneumonias, and skin and soft tissue infections. So it is a good drug to treat lung infection also. And now coming to what is the dose. So the dose of arbicacin is 150 to 200 mg once a day, given over 30 minutes to 2 hours. So how about arbicacin in combination with other antibiotics? So obviously, when we are using one drug, when patients are very sick, we are using an empiric. So you would use it as a combination. So it has, then you need to look at with which drug it has synergy. So arbicacin is shown to have good synergy with aztreonam, especially when you are targeting Pseudomonas. And it has a good synergy with vancomycin, teicoplanin or ampicillin sulbactam when you are targeting VISA, vancomycin intermediate sensitive Staphylococcus aureus, or VRSA, vancomycin resistant Staph aureus. So especially for VISA and VRSA, it could be used in combination with teicoplanin where it has a good synergy. And it has a good synergy with meropenem and imipenem against Acinetobacter. So these are the studies. So when we look into the details of this drug, so this drug has a unique positioning in a typical infection of skin and soft tissue where you may have a mixed flora and you want to target gram negative and gram positive and MRSA. So rather than using glycopeptides, so when you use possibly meropenem or carbapenem with arbicacin, so you know arbicacin will cover MRSA. If meropenem is not covering CRE, carbapenem resistant enterobacteriaceae, arbicacin may have a role in having a synergistic effect and tackling that also. I think these are the typical situations where one could consider, or intra-abdominal infections because it has a good biliary fluid concentrations. So when you are dealing with intra-abdominal, obviously you may put high-end antibiotic like carbapenem if you are dealing with a septic shock with intraperitonitis. And then obviously you may have to throw in glycopeptide to cover enterococcus. So there you can throw in arbicacin. Again it would cover MRSA, enterococcus, and it may cover the drugs that may be resistant to carbapenems or any other drugs that you may have to do. So these are the typical situations where arbicacin could be positioned. So what about Indian data? So this was a drug, this was a study done which came in JAPI. So they looked at 162 MRSA infected patients, and these infections was skin and soft tissue and pneumonia. 81 were in arbicacin group, 81 were in vancomycin group, and the overall cure rate even in the Indian study was comparable. So it was non-inferior, and the clinical cure rate also was non-inferior. So there's no difference. And microbiological cure rate also is no different between vancomycin and arbicacin, which means to say arbicacin is non-inferior, if not superior to vancomycin. But if you have to subscribe to the East European studies, the side effect profile was significantly less with arbicacin. And in this particular Indian study, they saw that wound healing, because the skin and soft tissue infections and the wound healing. So you see two curves here. One is the vancomycin and the blue one is the arbicacin. It was same. So the wound healing also happened effectively in either of the groups where arbicacin or vancomycin was used. But one significant difference they found was the fever clearance. So within 10 days, so this was a graph. See, if you see this, within 10 days, the fever occurrence, the blue one is arbicacin, happened in more number of patients when compared to the uh, vancomycin group, which only 34% of the patient had fever resolution as compared to 65.3%, and that was statistically significant. So now about the whole dosing. So there is a suggestion that therapeutic drug monitoring has to be done, because for all amino glycosides, to ascertain the efficacy of this drug, we need to monitor serum drug levels to ascertain whether it has attained a good levels to have a bactericidal effect. So therapeutic drug monitoring is something that is suggested, especially in AKI, because there you wouldn't know what is the exact dose that needs to be used to balance between nephrotoxicity and clinical efficacy or microbiological cure and elderly patients. So the serum levels, the peak concentration level at which it is effective is 12 micrograms per ml. Okay. And what about AKI? See, now the whole question is the typical type of patients we're talking about: complicated intra-abdominal infections with sepsis, where you want to use arbicacin, or skin and soft tissue infections, where they are in a critically unwell in sepsis or septic shock. So you would want to throw in arbicacin. These are the typical patients who would possibly have acute kidney injury, because creatinine would be impaired in generally in these patients. So then we should have some inkling about what is the dosing. So suggested dosing is, usually the dosage is 200 mg once a day or 150 mg. So there you put half the dose, 100 mg, 12 to 24 hourly if creatinine clearance is 20 to 25, or you have to space it longer, use 100 mg and space it as 48 hourly if creatinine clearance is less than 20 ml. If there are dialysis, you would possibly have to give post dialysis. So that is the dosing that is suggested. How about in pediatrics? For preterm infants with postnatal age less than 28 days, the dosage is 5 mg per kg 48 hours. If it is postnatal age more than 28 days, is 5 mg per kg every 24 hours. But what is important for us to remember is for infants, it is 4 mg per kg every 24 hours. So that is the dose of arbicacin in pediatrics, because aminoglycosides would be possibly used in some pediatric patients with enterocolitis. So that is the dosing to remember. So thank you very much. So that is all we know about arbicacin with regards to the studies, with regards to the science behind it. So it's a new drug. So we need to see how effective it is in gram negative, because India we have more of burden with gram negative. So this is again, as I say, this is a distinct drug which can be positioned in intra-abdominal infections to cover enterococcus and CREs along with carbapenems, where it acts synergistically, or in skin and soft tissue infection also, where there is a possibility of mixed flora of gram negative and gram positive. So where if you are throwing piperacillin tazobactam or you are throwing a carbapenem, so this could be added as an adjunct to cover MRSA, and later on MRSA and CREs if they have, and later on probably one could de-escalate based on the culture report. So this is the two groups of patients. Or you have a prosthesis, you have a osteomyelitis with the underlying prosthesis, even because it has an ability to penetrate biofilm. So that is also a group of patients where one could consider. So thank you all. If you have if you need any clarity, you can rehear to this lecture by visiting my website www.drpradeeprangappa.com. Thank you all.